You've been hearing a lot about Azure Arc, but what is Azure Arc enabled SQL Server and how can you start taking advantage of it today? Learn more in this episode of Data Exposed. Hi, I'm Anna Hoffman, and welcome to this episode of Data Exposed. Today, I'm joined by Sasha, a program manager on the Azure Data team. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, everybody.
And, we've talked a little bit about Azure Arc in some previous episodes, but I would love if you could give our viewers a brief recap of what is Azure Arc.
Sure. I would say Azure Arc is essentially three major use cases. Number one, Azure Arc extends its management capabilities to different servers and applications running outside of Azure. It could be hosted in your data center, in the different clouds, and it provides you a central management control plane to organize these resources. That's number one. The second use case is allowing you to essentially use cloud-style best practices and management capabilities within your compliance boundary. You don't have to leave your compliance boundary. You can continue running PaaS-like, highly automated platforms inside of it using Azure Arc. Again, controlled from Azure Arc control plane. And the third case is to allow you to leverage some of the Azure services that are applicable to your existing applications and servers, so that you don't have to do anything with the existing running in production types of solutions and still leverage Azure services. Those are the three cases.
Got it. Thanks, Sasha. Now, if I understand correctly, today we're going to focus on Azure Arc enabled SQL Server, which kind of more aligns with our third point. Can you tell us more about what this is?
Yes, exactly right. So Azure Arc enabled SQL Server really is about the existing SQL servers, which we have millions deployed in different environments, in different data centers, on bare metal, on virtual machines, in different clouds. And we want to make sure that you can leverage Azure services for those applications and servers. So I'd like to show you something. So this is a slide showing the architecture of Arc-enabled SQL Server. And we just announced the public preview of it yesterday at Ignite. As you can see, down below is essentially a layer of infrastructure, which can be anything, as I mentioned. It could be AWS Cloud, a Google Cloud, custom data center. You can use a virtualization layer if you have it, if your current setup leverages some virtualization control plane. Or you can install SQL Server on physical machines. It doesn't matter. We support either options. So within this physical or virtual machine, we have one or many installed SQL Server instances, which is what we want to improve, so to speak, or manage. Now, to achieve that, we have to install some agents on that machine. These agents will communicate with Azure Services up above. They communicate only in out-of-bound fashion through port 443, so there's no need to open any inbound ports for accessing your resources, because the agents will take care of the proper communications to Azure. And there are several different services at the Azure level. One of them is Hybrid Server. This is the service that allows managing your virtual or physical machine. And the things you can do is identity management, apply role-based security and Azure policies to your machine, and also manage deployment and configuration. That's the role of hybrid server. Specifically for SQL, we have extended the guest configuration agent, and this allows to now manage the inventory of different SQL Server instances running in different locations, as I mentioned, in any sort of infrastructure, but now centralized in a specific place of your choice in Azure itself. You choose which region you want to use to manage your inventory, which subscription you want to use for that, etc. The typical sort of set of Azure-related tasks. The third one is log analytics. It's the place where you can send your logs and different other monitoring information, and then leverage powerful log analytics capabilities to generate sophisticated reports and analysis of the data that you've sent from your environment. That is done by an agent called Microsoft Monitoring Agent. That agent takes care of connecting your environment with the log analytics workspace. One important benefit of that is integration with Security Center, which enables advanced data security for your databases. Things like advanced threat protection, for example, where you can monitor various types of attacks and security attempts on your SQL Server. The other interesting integration is integration with the Azure Sentinel. It's one of the new security services in Azure that allows you to perform troubleshooting and sort of deep analysis of the threats and attacks when they occur. So this is a powerful scenario. And the third scenario that I am actually going to show you is called SQL Environment Health, which is an ability to periodically validate your entire SQL configuration and see if you have any issues you need to worry about. Perhaps you want to tune it to achieve better performance, or because some of the configuration settings are not exactly secure and you'd like to remove that. So this is a very tangible, high value of Azure services applied to your existing applications that you have today. So I'd like to switch this to show you my environment here. This is Azure Portal. And as you can see, I have now two different machines running SQL Server in completely different places, but they all show up in one view on my portal. The first one is a virtual machine that I have set up running SQL 19. And the other one is actually a physical machine sitting in my office in Microsoft, connected to Azure. Now, I am at home using my laptop, and I can see those machines in one place. I can manage them from my laptop, not being inside of the secure environment in which those SQL instances are running, but I can still manage them all in one place. So let's say I want to see that assessment I mentioned and validate my environment. So I can go to one of these machines and show you what it looks like. So this is kind of the information about my specific SQL Server instance. It talks about the version it runs, on what computer name, how to connect to it, etc. Of course, the typical information about where in Azure it is registered. And it shows the size of it and many other things. But what's important here is these headings on the left, which allows me to switch to one of those high value scenarios. In this case, I want to switch to environment health. This is where I can initiate the environment health. All I need to do is run the script against this machine, which turns on a periodic task on premises or inside of this particular VM to scan my environment. And by default, it happens every week. The environment is scanned and the report is updated on Azure. So I can basically be aware of any issues that this machine potentially has with respect to its SQL configuration. Now, this is going to take some time. When the first scan happens, the data only will show up 1 hour later because it collects a lot of performance monitoring information from the machine. So obviously I cannot wait that long, but I have set up another machine that already has data that I can show you. And this is this machine. In this machine, again, you see the same view. It's slightly different type of machine, but it's the same exact type of information. And I go to environment health, and here you will see a very detailed report of my environment. I'm going to switch to last 7 days because I had some negative runs initially. So I'm going to switch to last 7 days just to show you the current state of that configuration. As you can see, you have several buckets. First of all, it checks the assessment quality, which means the scans are running normally, no problems with sending data to Azure, etc. The second one is security and compliance, which essentially lists you some of the checks we perform and reports you the score. And some of the red ones is what you should pay attention to and perhaps change. For example, if I go to configure the focus area here is some of the network settings that I have in my environment, and it gives you very prescriptive steps that you might want to take to remediate the issues that it detected. So that is how this report works, and again, it's going back to it. And there are some other areas, like, for example, performance and scalability. It also verifies if your availability group is set up correctly. It checks if you are up to date with the latest upgrades, etc. As you can see now, you can immediately leverage Azure by just connecting your SQL instance and get very, very tangible value from a Azure service, which you couldn't do before. And that's one example of what Azure Arc brings to you as a value, as a user and customer of SQL Server.
Awesome. Thanks, Sasha. That was really interesting. I hadn't seen any of that before, so it's cool how you can see stuff from on-prem and different environments in one place. Now, I did have a question. You know, when I think about the Azure Arc enabled data services versus Azure Arc enabled SQL Server, is there a difference? What is the difference? Can you help me understand?
So the data services, remember I mentioned 3 main use cases for Azure Arc. So data services falls into the second one, which is to say, okay, I have highly secure compliance boundary in my environment. I cannot leave it because of the compliance rules. But at the same time, I want to run my application leveraging the automation and best practices that I can enjoy if I were to move to Azure. Obviously, we have these sophisticated workflows that essentially help customers to manage their, let's say, SQL databases, managed instances, etc., so that I don't have to essentially deploy special tools and do all these things. So essentially bring sort of these best practices and automation capabilities to your environment so you can feel like you are in the cloud, yet you're not leaving your environment because of the compliance requirements. Now, obviously, it is still a newest version of SQL Server we call Evergreen version, which one of the benefits of which is, by the way, that you don't have to worry about upgrades. It auto-upgrades itself as necessary, but you do have to essentially modernize your app to being able to run using that particular version. You have to migrate your data to that version, and that what allows you to benefit from it. It requires running in the Kubernetes environment, etc. So this is essentially the data services value proposition. The SQL Server, Arc-enabled SQL Server, is what I was talking about, and that is the third use case, which is not only do I not want to leave my secure environment, I cannot really modernize my app, and the reason might be because it's certified with a specific ISV tool, or has to run a specific SQL version because of the same issue, certification with an ISV tool, or because the application is, it's been many years since I started running that application against MySQL, and I no longer have the expertise to modernize that application. There are many reasons why you cannot change anything. So what we offer is to say, look, all you need to do is essentially install the agents on the machine, but other than that, you can leave your applications as is.
Gotcha. So, I just want to highlight that second option, Azure Arc enabled SQL Server, doesn't involve any sort of migration or any need to move to Kubernetes. So that's really cool. Are there any limitations?
Yeah, not only that, actually, I'm sorry for interrupting. I would like to point out that it doesn't even require you to stop the application. You can continue on running because maybe it's a 24/7 type application. You don't want to stop it, and we don't want you to stop it. We are not asking you to stop it. It's just basically a side-by-side installation of agents, all it is.
That's awesome. So not only no migration, but also like no downtime as you even get this thing set up.
Exactly.
One more question I have is, are there limitations on what versions of SQL Server are going to support doing this sort of thing?
Yeah, there's no limitations. We really support all officially supported versions starting from 2012. We do not support 2008 because it just went out of support last year. So that is sort of out of the support window. But other than that, you can basically connect any version of SQL Server that you're running to Azure and take advantage of these scenarios that I was talking about.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sasha. This has been really informative for myself, and I'm sure for our viewers watching. My final question is for our viewers that want to get started today, how do you recommend they get started or learn more?
Okay, so there's we just released it. There is public documentation showing how to essentially enable your environment, to connect your environment to Azure Arc. But just briefly, I can show you that the thing that you need to do is say add Azure Arc if it's a new server. It gives you some prerequisites that you need to comply with. And then when you go to server details, you need to provide very basic information about Azure, where you want to create your essentially the projections of your environment in, and some of the server details, which again is very basic. The only thing that you need to specify, if you're using HTTP proxy, you would have to additionally provide that. And then what will happen is it'll generate a script. If I select, of course, some sort of resource group, it will generate a script. And good thing about it is that script is not specific to the machine. You can run that script for the particular machine you specified, or you can run that script at scale. You can execute the same script against multiple machines in your environment and essentially get them all connected to Azure in one go. And the documentation that you will see will provide you the detailed steps, the detailed information about what to do and how to do it. But it's really simple.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks again, Sasha, for joining us on the show today. We'll put some resources in the description, so be sure to check that out. If you like this video, please like our video, subscribe to our channel, and leave us a comment and let us know what you're doing with Azure Arc. We hope to see you next time on Data Exposed.